I've always believed that if you're going to build the future, you might as well make it big. Absurdly, ridiculously big. And that's really the story of how SpaceX went from a half-broken warehouse in El Segundo to people now talking about a $1 trillion+ valuation and one of the biggest IPOs in history, potentially in 2026, which honestly still feels surreal, even to me, because when I started this journey, the only thing I knew for sure was that rockets kept blowing up and everyone kept telling me it would never work, and yet here we are, launching Starship after Starship, flying payload after payload, sending astronauts to orbit, building Starlink into a global communications network, and pushing humanity closer to becoming multi-planetary, which was the point all along, even if people thought it sounded like science fiction. And now the discussions around taking SpaceX public, well, it's complicated because I've never been a huge fan of the short-term pressure that comes with public markets. But at the same time, if you want to build a self-sustaining Mars economy, you're eventually going to need capitals on a scale no private company has ever raised. And that's why an IPO raising something like $25 billion isn't crazy. In fact, it might be necessary. Because colonizing another planet isn't cheap, and neither is building the world's largest satellite constellation. And I know people are fascinated by the $1 trillion+ valuation numbers floating around. But to me, valuation is just a shorthand for a deeper question. Do we have the resources to pull off the next phase of civilization? The phase where humanity stops being a single planet species and becomes something more resilient, more ambitious, more interesting. So when I think about an IPO, I don't think about the price tag or what headlines it generates. I think about what it unlocks. Thousands of starships built, millions of tons lifted to orbit, a Mars base that grows from the first few pioneers to a thriving settlement, a solar system economy that transforms what's possible for science, industry, and life itself. And if public markets are the mechanism that accelerate that trajectory, then yes, the time might be coming. And if 2026 becomes the year SpaceX steps into that arena, then it will be because the mission demands it, because the timeline for becoming a multiplanetary species demands it. Because at the end of the day, this was never about building a company for the sake of building a company. It was about pushing the boundaries of what humans can do. And if people think that makes SpaceX worth $1 trillion or more, then fine. But what really matters is that every dollar, every launch, every piece of engineering gets us closer to Mars, closer to a future where life is not something fragile, balanced on one world, but something robust, spread across many. And if the IPO becomes another rocket engine pushing us toward that horizon, then that's exactly what we'll do, because I didn't come this far. And SpaceX didn't survive all those explosions and failures just to stop when things started getting interesting. The real story is still ahead. And if there's one thing people still misunderstand about SpaceX, it's that none of this was ever meant to be comfortable or easy. Because doing something easy wouldn't change anything. And from the beginning, the goal was to bend the arc of the future, even if it meant burning through failures like fuel. And part 2 of this story, the part we're entering now, is where things stop being theoretical and start becoming irreversible. Because Starship isn't a prototype anymore, it's a production line. And Starlink isn't a bet anymore. It's a network reshaping how the world connects. And with all of that momentum comes the question I keep getting asked. Why even consider an IPO when we've done just fine privately? And the truth is that fine isn't good enough for what we're trying to do next, because building a city on Mars, building orbital shipyards, building point-to-point Earth travel, building the infrastructure for a civilization that exists in more than one place at a time. Those things require an industrial scale so large that even I can't bootstrap it forever. And yes, going public means more scrutiny, more noise, more people trying to optimize for the next quarter instead of the next decade. But it also means unlocking a level of capital that could compress timelines dramatically. And timelines matter because life on Earth isn't guaranteed. Eventually something will hit us, or we'll hit ourselves, and we need that backup plan sooner rather than later. So, if 2026 becomes the year SpaceX hits the public markets, it won't be because we want to ring a bell on Wall Street. It'll be because humanity needs the acceleration. And honestly, the idea that SpaceX might be valued at over $1 trillion just shows that people are starting to understand the scale of what we're tackling. Because when you're literally rebuilding the physics of transport, communication, and planetary habitation, the numbers get weird, almost abstract. But the mission never does. The mission stays sharp. Make life multiplanetary, ensure the long-term survival and flourishing of consciousness, and have fun blowing up rockets on the way there. And maybe one day, people will look back at this moment, this weird, noisy transition phase where SpaceX is half startup, half future civilization engine, and realize that the IPO wasn't the destination. It was just another booster stage, a thing that fires hard, drops away, and lets the next phase ignite. Because everything we're doing now, every engineering breakthrough, every launch, every risk, is aimed toward that horizon where the first humans walk on Mars, not as visitors, but as founders. And when that happens, nobody will be talking about valuations anymore. They'll be talking about history. And that's why we keep pushing. Why Part 2 isn't an ending, but the ignition sequence for everything coming next. Because once a company reaches a scale where people start whispering about trillion-dollar valuations and historical IPOs, you realize you've crossed a line where the world stops seeing you as a scrappy engineering outfit and starts seeing you as an institution, a kind of gravitational mass in the economy. But inside SpaceX, it still feels like a bunch of engineers arguing at 2 a.m. about valve tolerances and thermal protection tiles. And that's exactly how I want it to stay, even if the outside world insists on projecting something grander. Because the magic of SpaceX was never the money or the headlines. It was the willingness to try things that looked impossible, to run toward failure so fast that failure couldn't keep up, and that spirit has to survive the next phase, the public market phase, the trillion-dollar phase, the phase where people will dissect every decision we make through a financial microscope, even though the true metric that matters is actually something like how many tons per year can we lift to Mars, which is not exactly standard Wall Street vocabulary, but that's the reality of the mission. And as we move closer to an IPO, I keep thinking about the responsibility we carry, not to shareholders, not even to customers, but to the future versions of humanity who might one day look up from the surface of Mars and realize their existence depended on a series of decisions made decades earlier, decisions that sometimes looked reckless or insane or financially absurd, but were actually necessary. Because when you are trying to extend consciousness beyond a single planet, you can't optimize for comfort, and you definitely can't optimize for quarterly earnings. You optimize for survival, curiosity, possibility, and the raw ambition to turn science fiction into geography. So, part 3 is really about scale, a level of scale humanity has never attempted. Starship factories humming like automotive plants, fleets of boosters returning daily, orbital refueling becoming as mundane as topping off your car. Starlink connecting even the most remote parts of Earth while also serving as the backbone of interplanetary communication, and everything building toward those first true Mars missions. Not exploration missions, but settlement missions. The kind where people pack their whole lives into a rocket and don't buy a return ticket. And yes, some people think this is all wild speculation, but those are usually the same people who said reusable rockets were impossible. And I've learned that the best way to handle skepticism is not to argue, but to launch something that proves the point. And whether the IPO happens exactly in 2026 or shifts a bit, doesn't fundamentally change the direction we're heading. It simply determines how fast we can accelerate, because once the engine's light, once humanity collectively decides that our future is bigger than one planet, everything else becomes secondary. And maybe that's why so many people are fascinated by this moment, because they can sense it, the shift, the inflection point, the feeling that we're not just building a company, we're building the scaffolding for the next chapter of human history. And when people ask me what part 3 really means, I tell them it's simple. It's the part where the dream stops being a plan and starts becoming a place, a real place, a place we can go.